Shalom, shalom. Welcome back for another episode. I've been having a great week. I have been really organizing. I feel like I'm coming into a place of just finishing touches, so to speak, an organization of something that I have been working on for years, understanding. And so I'm really getting ready on a major way to unpack, to teach the tree of life. I've realized now that this truly is the 32 paths of wisdom. This is all of the systematic, encoded in this, all the systematic understanding that the rabbis and sages have always had in order to keep all the information straight in the house of Israel. So for this time. But I want to go through, and I'm just going to do a little teaser because I have all these keys. I have been keeping the remezes in files for years. So I have like a whole file on trees, allegorically how trees are used widely in all the scriptures, and not just on the Peshat level, obviously, but into the deep sewed, into the more mystical tradition. So there's a very, and this is so apropos to start with trees, and I was really excited about this. My next class, literally, that I'll be doing will be on trees. I'm doing one right now on opening of the keys to the kingdom, a beginning survey class that kind of introduces the whole concept to the Ephraimite mind, aka Christian, so they can just really have a great foundation. The foundation has to be laid again. So back to a tree. We just had this festival this week. And it's so beautiful. I encourage always Ephraim to go and study and learn and meditate and try to, these festivals are so full of spiritual wisdom and understanding. But we just had the renewal of the trees. Actually, you could say we're still sort of in this season right now. And this is a beautiful, it is a tradition, but it comes 100% from the Torah. And it's a way that they encapsulate information and the rituals and the traditions, the spiritual energy that goes with this. So these things, these festivals are important. So there's a verse in Deuteronomy 20:19, and it says that a person is a tree of the field. Now that is a remez. If there was ever a remez, did I say that Deuteronomy 20:19? That is a remez. But on the Bishat level, which of course, I teach according to this. There are links in the videos to take you to videos that will explain parts, which is Jewish exegesis, which is a way of layering scripture very clearly and very efficiently, very orderly. Anyways, the Bishat level of this holiday, the renewal of the trees that everyone was just sort of, to whatever degree celebrating, would be to plant trees. Actually, it has had in the last 70 years a huge impact on the nation of Israel because they have planted so many trees. This is like Arbor Day. But, that is great. And it has a wonderful physical renewal to the earth because it has helped Israel to just bloom, blossom, like in a wilderness. But more than that, that's just the Peshat level. So we got to go deeper. So the remez is that a person is the tree of the field. See, this is the point. We've been grafted back into, quote unquote, this tree of life. If you understand anything about the Torah at this point, especially from my teachings, the Torah is always going from, macro to micro, from the very smallest into the total expansiveness of everything that any idea, word, person, a genetic tree of a person, a genetic tree of a word, whatever. It's always expanding. But the other thing to understand is that these words, that's how they encode things in it. But on the deeper level, this is really supposed to be what's sad to me is that most of Christianity and much of Judaism is just totally always at the Peshat level on these things. And we're missing this rich spiritual blessing where it's called the wine, the oil, the honey, the aged meat, the aged wine. It has a lot of words that we are missing because we just don't know how. Basically, been taught and to believe it and to get down to the soul level. But it's a renewal of the time that our whole physicality, because this is what I was going to say with this, it always starts macrocosm, it goes to microcosm. It's like an accordion, the way this whole incredible Yahweh he just runs to and fro, or his angels just run to and fro in very straight circuit paths. So it is important to see how these things get truncated into layers of meaning. But what would be beautiful, and I read this, and this is where you begin to get the remezes and the hints in this hotbed, how fruit trees and how the different grasses and how they categorize the different vegetable kingdoms and what they refer to, because they really do. There is an absolute principle that everything in the physical world is a metaphor for a deeper spiritual truth or concept. And this is why the Hebrew language, it's called the language of creation, and I believe it's a total metaphysical creation or language of creation, because it can do this. It can go from, you know, on a physical world, the letters are coded to contain physical information, but also the deeper spiritual, the essence, the real DNA in deep inside. And a metaphor, it means a symbol, it's a figure and of speech. So when you look at the Hebrew letters, this is what you will learn as you keep going deeper. These letters actually are metaphors, are symbols for much deeper spiritual energies and truth. But how these are used, this with trees, this is so interesting, because when you understand the tree of life, which is not that hard, really, you got to learn about 10 separate, and you got to kind of learn about 22 letters. So really, even a child can do this. The Jewish children do this. But the secret of Jerusalem and Zion on how these words are used is metaphors. And it's called for the Partsufim of Rachel. The Partsufim is a word that means Sephiroth, which means one of these emanative, in the broadest sense, emanative, you know, grace. It's how the Father flows to us. They've identified it. This is in the kingdom. This is in physicality. But it is, so Rachel, I mean, the way the words are all coded, I won't go into it, but anyone who has been schooled in this understands you're totally talking about Malkut. All right. That's what these words, they point direction to where you are. But the earth is the source of life's energy force, okay? So to reference it in if you take its physical location and you give it its energetic or its spiritual application, and like I said, taking the human being, again, further being the microcosm of the macrocosm on all levels, this is, so trees, so let's say this, then you can follow a progression. Because in the worlds that we live in constantly, if you're a living, talking human being, you are living right now in the worlds of Yetzirah, well, we'll call it of Asiyah, the world of physicality, of physicalness, the world of Yetzirah, which is my emotional levels, and the world of Bedria, which is my mentalities, what I think. All right, and those three are constantly always feeding information and interacting with each other in our body. But if you were to take that and apply that in a physical way, all right, so the tree, or let me just say this, the land with this is equated with the physical, the world of Asiyah. So that's why these Hebrew words, because they're so rooted in nature. So when it's talking about, a lot of times in the Bible, it talks about the earth, the eretz, and we always just kind of put it out there with the dirt and the plants and the trees. We don't. We need to internalize it. It's the physical, it's our carnal nature. The truest way to extract meaning out of that from Torah is to understand that the land is the physical, is our carnal nature, is our world of physicality, world of Asiyah. That's how the land is, because he's, you know, there's going to be this marriage between the heavens and the earth. That's a metaphor, okay? What it's talking about is my physicality, which is subject to death, will be reunited with my other parts, my soul parts that are immortal. That's exactly what that means. So it's helpful. Now the sea, okay, so you have your land, you have the sea is constantly used in scripture, and it refers to the world of Yetzirah. And it's not physical, it is our emotive state. And again, this is why, you know, it always talks about the raging sea and, you know, or a calm sea, if you're peaceful or if you're all, I mean, these words are used to literally describe absolutely emotional states. And trees. Now, this is where we get back down to trees, because you plant trees, right, in the land and physicality. Trees are human beings. This is what I mean. A tree is It says it right in Deuteronomy, a person is a tree of the field. See, that's an interesting word too. You have to see these, the word field. And honestly, truly, in the physics of this is talking about an energy field. I mean, it's not talking about, this is what I mean. It's not talking about a little cow grazing field out there, or, you know, that you're going to grow leeks or something in. This is talking about energy dimensions, okay? Energy fields. All right, and I'm going to continue to flush that out, but this is how they code in very advanced, even scientific understanding of which we know, the things we know to be true in the world. So it's important to understand that these three, land, sea, and trees and field, are all relating, can relate totally, and do relate. You want to get the meat out of Torah, if you want to get the essence, if you want to get the spiritual bread that's there, you need to mine it and apply those to these different levels on the tree of life, which is telling you where to apply it. Okay, sea. So the raging of the sea, the calming of the seas, you know, you're talking about your emotional state. You got the Peshat, obviously. There's, you know, Yeshua was in a boat in Galilee. You know, we don't have to doubt that. But in other ways, when he's talking, there is this allegory, and it's in the emotional state. You wouldn't apply that to the mind. There's other allegorical words that would apply to that. Just like we're saying trees are souls, and really it should be souls. When the body is talking about people, it's really talking on their soul level, because again, that's what's important. We know the body decays until this time of the renewal of all things, the true renewal of the trees. When the tree of life is actualized in its total energetic light, the che that's in it, chai, then we will have this immortality again. But until then, we're gonna use code words that are close to physicality to describe. Here's another one on trees. See, and this is, though, if you know this, and this is what makes, to me, the Torah so exciting when you discover this. And all right, so in the second book of Adam and Eve, now the books of Adam and Eve are a collection of writings that are actually very good to read, because they give us a lot of information. They were written by, you know, peoples who were migrating out of Jerusalem in the first couple hundred years, but they took with them a lot of information that they were bringing back to cultures that weren't necessarily Jewish or speaking Hebrew or Aramaic, and they were translating this information. So a lot of times it does come from Greek or from other more, but the core, the essence, you can really understand. But to my point, it says in the second book of Adam and Eve, in chapter 1, verse 8, it says, and in that place were many fruit trees and forest trees. I think I've covered this one before, because, okay, and this is what is called a very simple rule of logic, which is how you know, they have laws of how you transfer information. You're not willy-nilly. According to this one plan of tautology, it's always an equality. What you say over here with whatever language, and then you say it again over here, they mean the same thing. They're just using like a metaphor. So here we have fruit trees, okay? And we know that he planted, if you read in Genesis, this gets really exciting to unpack the depth of Genesis. And then we have, you know, the forest trees, or I think it's called it, well, I guess we'll just see some of these translations. You gotta follow along to see forest trees, like the tall tree, like cedars of Lebanon. They're the low-lying trees. See, there's a lot of words that describe, you know, trees that grow low to the ground, trees that are tower up. But this is, it says that in the second part of the verse, and in that place were many fruit trees and forest trees. Okay, which probably literally there were. But then it goes on to say in tautology, his sister bare him children. So in other words, you taking this one and it equaling, and it's telling you right in the verse that it's equaling children. Now, how could they make that deduction unless they knew that trees were souls, were people, and people have offspring? So you can call those offspring, the offspring of the fruit trees and the forest trees, or, you know, this is what they're doing. The fruit of the tree, that's the souls. Those are the offspring that come out of it. So his sister bare him children, who in their turn began to multiply by degrees until they filled that place. So there's no getting around the fact that that fruit trees and forest trees are referencing souls who reproduce, who produce children. So it's very logical. They're not. Okay, here's another one. Like I said, I'm just going to really quickly. And like I said, I'm building out a whole set of charts and ways in which to follow this. So stick with me. You should send me an email if you're interested in more information or the classes. Go to my website, The Elect Life, www.theelectlife.org. And I have a section of the classes and things. Podcasts you can listen to. That's always an easy, fun thing to do. I have a very excellent free video series on the YouTube called The Tree of Life. And people really getting familiar with the metaphors, with the words that are used and already coded and defined, and to the point to the soul level. This is the new way, the awakening. This is part of the spiritual awakening that is coming to Ephraim. As a matter of fact, it's here. So, all right, let's just move away from that one. I want to cover a few more. Let's see. Here, okay, now another thing to talk about, and I've mentioned this a few times, but it's very clear that, well, I'll read this one. There's another book, Tobit. Tobit is a book, a deuterocanonical book in the Catholic Bibles, okay? And it's a great book to read. So it says, be prepared for the road. And there's a lot of journeying going on in Tobit, but in this one, just pulled out of context, but you'll see what I mean. Be prepared for the road, and may you fare well on it. And his son prepared whatever was necessary for the journey. And his father said to him, travel together with this person, for the God who dwells in heaven will facilitate your path, and his angel will travel together with you. And they both went out to depart, and the youth's dog along with them. Now the thing is a dog is a code word for a companion. This is where when I get to the animal kingdom, then I start to unpack, what's referenced with eagles, with birds, with the creeping things, with the serpents, with the beasts, with the, there's very specific references, but this one, dog is coded to, like, we know this, like a Canaanite or one of the pagan nations. But the point is that they're going on a journey, and the Father will give an angel together with you. So when the Zohar or when the mystical texts are talking about journeying from one place to another, it can mean an actual journey, but in most stories, it is following the spiritual path or the study necessary, the spiritual journey necessary to reveal the secrets of walking in the light, of getting down to this level. It's a journey. Hey, it's taken me 5, 6, 7, 8 years to really understand what I'm looking at and to be, I hope, fairly coherent in expressing this. So, so another one here is the concept of sitting. This is another one that's important. So we have walking, metaphorically as a journey, spiritual journey. Then we have lowering oneself. It's important in the New Testament. There's a verse that's referenced where Stephen looks up and he sees Yeshua, the king, sitting at the right hand of the Father, which is a very sephirific position. I'll get there. But he was sitting, and then all of a sudden he stands up. It's very important. They're conveying something. They didn't really see they didn't see Jesus. Not seeing this guy and how to see. No, it means something. When he was at rest. So when you're sitting in that you're lowering, that Yah sits via his throne, it means he is lowering himself to be concerned with his creation. Remember, Yeshua lowered himself. He became lower than this class of angels. That's really our problem, our dog in us. But this is important. And when he's sitting and he's at peace and everything is at rest, the throne is, it's at rest. People are sitting, right? When you're sitting, you're resting. But when you're standing, it implies much more command and action. And so when he is standing at the stoning of Stephen, he's like taking notice, and believe me, it didn't go unnoticed. All right. And I am sure that there was some reap what you sow ramifications in all of that action by the people involved. But the concept, all right, is lowering oneself to be concerned with creation and with, see, it says he walks among us. Feet walking, I'll just say that's always refers to this lower level of asiyah, the world of physicality. where the lowest level, where we are on the earth. We walk on the earth with our feet. So obviously you would refer to that with your feet. I think thoughts of Yahweh Elohim in my head. So that's why higher up in my head, up here, these are the mentalities. It's all very specific. Now here's one that's a lot of people should be familiar with. There's a Proverbs 25:11, and it basically says this: a word well spoken is like gold, pebbles of gold in a silver dish. Okay, so that's very poetic, but what does it really mean? You know, a word well spoken, which I'll tell you right now is referring to wisdom. The highest words that you can speak are the words of wisdom from the mouth of a Torah sage. That's what, even higher than a prophet. People who teach the wisdom of Torah in the Jewish hierarchy, so to speak, it's a much higher level of attainment of spirituality than somebody who is a prophet. That's just what, but many of them were also prophets. So, you know, you got to get to that level. But anyways, Maimonides, who is Maimonides, I never can say it, so whatever. The Rambam, in his book, famous book, The Guide for Perplexed, interprets the proverb. Now, here's a guy who is schooled in the Torah traditions. There's no reason why he would not understand how this is supposed to be uncoded. So he says that apples of gold are the secrets held within the dish of the Torah text, because this is one of the main principles now. Again, the Torah, you have two types of Torah. And this is a very important concept. This is why you have the Torah. You have the written, we'll just call it the text, right? And then you have the oral. This is a huge part of the tradition. You have the oral Torah. And so now it's telling us that the silver is the literal text of Torah. So now we can equate this with silver, right? That's what it just told us. Which is the text, is the written Torah. Then the apples of gold are the secrets within the silver dish of the Torah text. So here, gold is it's the secret, see, that's held inside. This is the secrets or the oral Torah. S-E-C-R, I got that. All right. Secrets. Okay. And so this refers to the oral Torah, and it is, see, the apples of gold are the secrets held within the silver dish, because it's a word fitly spoken, which is a word that would come from this category of wisdom or oral Torah. Okay, so it is like, are the secrets held within the silver dish. So the dish is the silver part. The container, which is another way of always understanding, they always put information in the container, and they put that container then, whether even it's a book, in a larger, the next level would be even larger and more expansive. But so I think I made all those connections there. Because this is held within. See, it's always within. The wisdom, the kingdom of heaven is within. The psychological parts, remember, heaven is another thing. Earth refers to my nephesh, my soul, my bodily carnal nature. Heavens refers to the dimensions of my soul, my psychology, and my mentalities. That literally is what they're all talking about. Okay, so here's one. There's another very enigmatic verse that says, my son, one of the exclamations that Jacob made when he learned that his son Joseph was alive in Egypt. And one of the things is, it says, if you read in the mystical writings, that the death of his son, or the loss, which he thought was a death of Joseph, and the death of Rachel, really just kind of knocked Jacob out of it just really kind of knocked him for a loop for quite a few years. I mean, wouldn't it? Here's a guy who, it says he's carrying on birthright promises for the nations, for the whole, and he has such tragic personal hardships. But what it, be that as it may, the Ephraim, or let me just start over, because let me say, because it says Joseph, when he finds out, he gives this they take this gasp of just joy. For the first time, he felt joy of the Holy Ghost. He says, "My son Joseph is alive." That's what makes me want to cry, because see, that's so prophetic of what our Savior, what the Mashiach said, because of the joy that was set before him. My son Joseph is alive. There are people of God in the nations that need to come into the house of Israel during these last 2 days, the footsteps of Messiah. It's all. So anyway, so understanding that Joseph is a code. He said, my son Joseph is alive, not just Joseph, as we understand, but all the offspring that went to the four corners of the earth. So, okay, but there's a verse that says, Paul makes this allusion, and I've just seen so many people trip over it, so to speak. Christians, to me, they just trip over this stuff because they just are still, in some ways, still just too anti-Semitic to understand that Judah has kept the Torah in the house. Okay, and believe in Mashiach. That's the whole point. He is our Mashiach. They will never take that away from us. Okay, just as we will never take Messiah ben David from them. These are two halves of the same whole, reuniting the whole house of Israel. But the verse says that more are the children of the desolate woman than the woman who lives with her husband. Now, if you understood the two houses and the relationships of this is coded to say that the desolate children are the children of Ephraim, the ones that were scattered, the northern kingdom, divorced, sent away, cut off from the covenant. They had no inheritance. It went on for, I think, 2,300 years or something. I mean, it was a long time. No, I don't know if I have that quite right, because that's something different. That's something different. But from about 600 BC to about, the time of Yeshua coming, the first century. So anyways, more of the children of the desolate woman than the woman who lives with her husband. Who lives with her husband? Judah never got divorced. Judah always stayed in the house. It's the older brother. So you really have to understand these relationships to understand, what he's talking about. But there's many more Christians. Ephraim has the mantle, the firstborn, the covenant of multiplicity, of the Bekarah, okay? Or it's the Barakah, I never really on them, which is the blessing of increase, of multiplicity. They, so obviously more are their children. That's what it says. All right. So a couple of these other words that are coded in Leviticus 22:13, it talks about a priest's daughter. Now, yes, they're literally daughters of the Kohanim. But on a deeper level, the word priest daughter, especially the allusion in Leviticus 22:13, is to a holy soul. See, Sadiqs, their words, women, there's holy souls on both sides of the aisle, so to speak. But the priest daughter was another word that was kind of, because the holiness in that lineage indicates a holy soul. And women, again, being you couldn't even be Jewish. You couldn't, unless your mother was Jewish. So now there's another one here. It talks about the widow. Now we know there's literal widows. I just became a widow recently. And okay, so yeah, there's a literal Peshat meaning to that word. But on a deeper level, when you're reading it, is the widow, the state of widowhood. And this is important to understand because it's also used as the word, it's big metaphorically in so many things, because the widow that is cut off, it's when the state of the soul, when it departs from the body at death. So to be cut off for the soul, or the widow, so she's a widow, is state of the soul when it departs from the body. Okay, that's a whole category. House of Judah, the house of Israel Judah was widowed, okay, when she went into her, it was like she was widowed, went into her exile because the Shekinah left and all. But the house of Israel, Israel was divorced. And those are very important nuances and have ramifications for the state and their rectification. So Ephraim, being the house of Israel, was divorced, which means they were disconnected from the holy name. They were cut off from the covenants and the promises and the hope and everything, from the law, the Torah, everything. Okay. Now, she who has no child, okay, is a soul that has been cut off right? Has departed from this world, and it has no continuation in this world. So that has no, that soul is cut off. That's the scariest state to be in. That's why, you know, women in Israel, it was so important to have offspring, have children, because you would be, you know, think about paralleling in the spiritual realm, that there was no continuation. If you're not in the huge tree of life genealogy of all Israel, it would be a very serious thing. So let me look at something here. Let me just give you a couple more. I think it's great. Mountains. Let's just do a couple more. And I'm going to keep doing these little teaser videos and hoping to literally convince you to come into the classes where there really will be the overall understanding and much more meat of the word. So there's one, the mountains. See, another way, in the deepest level, all right, mountains, again, all these words have many levels of meaning. They have levels of meaning even in the, so otherworldly gets our emotion. Say unto that mountain. Sometimes we can have a root of bitterness or an anger that's just like it's a mountain. You just no way you can lift it and get it off. You know, but allegorically the Torah is telling us, yes, there is a way. Mashiach, there are ways to deal with these things. But let me go this back to the mountains. Well, here, the way they code, I just think it's fascinating. A lot of the way they code men and women, which is the way coded male and female. You know, I got to do a whole module on trees and a whole module on male and female, because that's huge. And that's in the language, and that has huge ramifications, you know, like all the way down from, you know, can tear all the way down. But frankincense and myrrh, here's one. You know, why did they, this frankincense and myrrh, and I think there was a third thing, I can't remember, that they take out of the garden. Like, what is that referring to? Why do they need those three things? You would think they would need a flashlight and, you know, some matches and something a little more practical. But they're on one level, these things always, and I haven't really done it even in these Sephiritic, or these words are also coded primarily and fundamentally and encapsulated in the tree of life. So there's something called the everlasting hills. So as I was saying, there's mountains and there's hills. Think of that. Hills are females because they're, and the reason is they do this because of the difference in the male and the female. So I don't want to go into that right now. Just trust, but mountains would be masculine. So the prophets are usually men, but they're mountains. The everlasting hills are the feminine. All right, even in a word or in a gender. But they refer to the everlasting hills. Did you ever hear that expression? This is that really refers sephirically to the two heys in the yod hey vav hey, which are feminine. Hey is a feminine marker. So you have yod hey, feminine, vav masculine, hey feminine. And they have the everlasting hills, because remember, hills is equated with feminine. It's Bina and it is Malkut. So this is where Bina is the first hay and Malkut is the last hay down here in physicality. And Bina is the most hidden and the most like sublime. Malkut is the one we all see down here, these hills in physicality. So another way that they, is the frankincense and myrrh, like I was about to say. Hills, argan are women, and frankincense is women. Myrrh, encoded as a mountain, is for men. Okay, I'm just telling you. And I'll give references and we'll get into that more, but just to whet your appetite. So again, that it says here, this is from one of the Mishnah, Trak Uma Naso 3. It says, nor put frankincense on it. For the matriarchs are symbolically known as frankincense. See, again, you have your matriarchs and your patriarchs, and they're also all coded to the Sephirith. Going back, you know, Leah is Bina and Rachel is Malkut. It goes all the way around. They are symbolically known as frankincense, as it says, to the hill of frankincense. And we've already determined that hill is referring to the feminine. So yet the accursed woman deviated from their ways. That's a way of saying, again, the blessed frankincense is a lovely fragrance. Frankincense is very valuable. It has properties. It's connected in the upper world. And we are talking patriarchally, to the matriarchs. So it's all fitting, always completely, they were like the accordion, just completely up and down. These allegories, these metaphors, these symbols. Well, let's see, I'm not going to do that one. From the mountains. This was saying, in the mountains, again, are collectively known as the triad, because there's 7 mountains, really, you can figure it out, basically, which refers to the lower 7 sephiroth. Each one is a mountain also, we'll cover that. But from the mountains, that phrase is known collectively as the triad of Hesed, Gevurah, and Tiferet, which is the upper triad in the mentalities. So and that's why it says the patriarchs, this is Isaac, this is Jacob, and this is Abraham. See, there is from the mountains, these Sephiroth, known as Hesed, Gevurah, and Tiferet, are also equated with the main patriarchs of the whole storyline, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So it never kind of breaks this incredible typology and tautology and ways in which you can apply a metaphor and go really, when you get it, quickly up and down the scriptures. So, and it's all contained in the letters and, all the little 4 parts that make up every letter, or, and makes these root words, which makes these concepts. So I hope you enjoyed that. So listen, I hope you will subscribe and you'll like this video, you'll share it, and check out my website for more classes. And let's move into this great anointing as all the hidden things. Hey, the hidden works of darkness are coming out, and they need to, and get judgment. But the hidden things of the light are also coming out. And we need to know how absolutely the whole earth is going to see Elohim and give glory. So shalom, shalom. I will see you in the next session.